Member for Kelowna Mission.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Well, the middle class squeeze is not about interest rates, and it's not about inflation. It's about the 7 years that this NDP government has had to deliver on the promise that they made to British Columbians of a future where home ownership was within reach. But today, BC is home to the highest average rents in the entire country, and we've ended up with the highest housing prices in North America. 7 years ago, British Columbians were promised an economy of opportunity and the ability to work in good, family-supporting jobs. Instead, we face an unprecedented affordability crisis that has left everyday British Columbians struggling to make ends meet, and a $7 billion inflationary deficit, the largest in BC's history. Now, I'm sure the Minister of Finance isn't proud of the fact that we now rank near the absolute bottom in the country for GDP growth, with a sluggish 0.8% growth rate predicted for 2024. Honourable Speaker, it is high time that the Premier and his cabinet stop playing the blame game and start taking responsibility for the dire state in which so many British Columbians find themselves. Under the NDP's government, 7-year-long middle-class squeeze, people are paying more while their paychecks are falling behind. And I know that cabinet ministers, their political staff, and top bureaucrats might not relate, given their comfortable raises that they've given themselves over the last few years, which is why I invite the Premier to come visit Kelowna, where families, community members, leaders, and many others will tell you the truth of how out of touch and disconnected this government has become. Just yesterday, I ran into Ed and his lovely German Shepherd while on a walk. We spoke of how dire things are in the natural resource sector and as well for middle-class people. What happens when the natural resource sector contracts? Well, BC's middle class pays more than ever, while the quality of life in BC worsens every day. I have a constituent, Tanya, who wrote me about the middle class squeeze, noting that her family isn't making ends meet, despite having a 2-income family. They're having to take their kids out of after-school care because they can't afford it anymore. Sadly, they don't even qualify for any of the subsidies sent out by this government. Why are they having such a hard time making ends meet? Well, in the past 7 years, this NDP government has introduced 29 new or increased taxes and fees, squeezing over $20 billion more a year out of the pockets of British Columbians. That's $5,000 for every single taxpayer. Economics 101, whatever you tax costs more. But what have the people received in return for the provincial government's out-of-control taxes and out-of-control spending? Nothing but an out-of-control housing market and an out-of-control cost of living. Then there's Jerry. He's a 72-year-old constituent and put 70% of his pension towards his rent. He asked me which he should afford next, food or utilities. Shame on this government for not seeing this and for not doing anything about it. While members opposite may deflect responsibility or blame history, the opposition stands up every day for British Columbians feeling the weight of increasing costs. And things are only going to get worse the longer that they stay on that side of the House. If we continue on the path that this NDP government has taken us on for the past 7 years, it is safe to say, Honourable Speaker, that paychecks will continue shrinking and purchasing power will continue evaporating. I shall remind members that economists are clear that the NDP's reckless policies will cut key industries by up to 20%, leading to recession-like conditions, fewer jobs, and declining incomes. By 2030, the NDP's middle-class squeeze will take nearly $5,000 every year out of the pockets of British Columbians. It is imperative that we stop this now. We continue to raise concerns from all British Columbians, families, new immigrants, students, workers, small business owners, and more. This economy isn't working for anyone. British Columbians deserve a future that they can look at with optimism and excitement, not the current environment which feeds despair and starves hope. British Columbians deserve a break from 7 years of this government's middle-class squeeze. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.